The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "You have learned how it was said, 'You must not commit adultery.' But I say this to you, if a man looks at a woman lustfully, he has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye should cause you to sin, tear it out and throw it away, for it will do you less harm to lose one part of you than to have your whole body thrown into hell. And if your right hand should cause you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It will do you less harm to lose one part of you than to have your whole body go to hell. It has also been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a writ of dismissal. But I say this to you, everyone who divorces his wife, except for the makes her an adulteress, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." The Gospel of the Lord. Today I want us to reflect on fear, feeling, and faith. These three things play a big role in our lives. Most of what we do is either controlled by fear, by feeling, or by faith. In our first reading today, Elijah was driven by fear into the wilderness when Queen Jezebel threatened to take his life after he murdered about 150 or 450 prophets of Baal. Jezebel sent words to him and said, "This time tomorrow, may God strike me if I don't do to you what you've done to those prophets of Baal." And so, out of fear, confronted by danger, Elijah gave in. He lost his faith in God, who have proved to him in 3 different occasions that he was there to support and guide him. You remember the first time God took him to, when the drought started, the drought that was going to last for 3.5 years, God took him to a place where there was water in a brook Cherit. And then God sent ravens to bring him food. And I did mention to you a few days ago that ravens are the most stingy birds in the world. But Elijah was fed by ravens. After that, God took him and put him together with a widow who had nothing. And God made sure the jug of oil and the flour never run dry. After that, when he came to have that national context with the prophets of Baal, God proved to him that he was there. When Elijah cried to God, God sent fire from heaven. All these things now were swept away because of fear. When he was confronted by Jezebel, he went out of fear into the wilderness. And he got to a stage in that journey where he started praying to die. He felt like dying. He said, "Look, I'm not even better than my ancestors. God, please take my life away now." He was so angry with himself and he was so disappointed with God. And then he went to the Mount of Horeb, where his fear has driven him into more problems. You know, sometimes if we are controlled by fear, we could think we might be seeking or maybe searching for a safe place only to get ourselves into more trouble. When he went to the place where he thought he was going to relax, then the mighty wind came, shattering the rock, uprooting the trees. He cried to God. God was not in the wind. Then came the earthquake. After the earthquake, the fire, as if that wasn't enough. And then after the fire, the gentle breeze came. When all became peaceful and calm, it was then he heard the sound of God. What is this saying to us? I know very soon, by God's grace, this pandemic will be over. Things will get back to normal. Hopefully by this time next year, not many people will think we ever went through anything like this. Those who lost their job, during this time might even get a better job. And life may even become better than it was. And many of us are going to forget the God who had led us through all this. When we are confronted by a little problem, there are many other great things that God have done in our lives. That little problem, like Elijah was confronted by the challenge from Jezebel, and he doesn't think God was going to save him, we may lose our faith. That is what fear can do. Going on from there, in our second reading, Jesus spoke about one other thing that controls our life, feeling. Sometimes our life is driven by feeling. And Jesus today was trying to dig deep into the root of sin. It's not just about murder, about stealing, about adultery, but these things are only the aftermath of the cause. There's something that leads to them. So to deal with sin, we need to deal with the source of it. And the source of our sin begins with feeling. Whatever that leads to the sin of lust starts with feeling. And that is why he said, the Lord says, in part, as part of his Sermon on the Mountain, that you must not commit adultery. And that is just the minimum requirement. But what leads to this is more important. That we must not allow our feeling to drive us into sin. That when a man looks at a woman lustfully, or a woman looks at a man lustfully, you have already committed adultery with that person in your heart. And sometimes we are doing this, we think we are searching for pleasure. We want something that we think this is what we want to have. And then by so doing, it drives us into more problems, like Elijah did. He allowed fear to drive him into more problems. And that is why when God came to Elijah, he said to him, why are you here? What are you doing here? Which signifies, sends a signal to him, you are not supposed to be here. So when we allow fears and feeling to control our life, it guides us to where we are not supposed to be. Because the sin of adultery can lead to pregnancy, it can lead to abortion in some cases, it can even lead, in a worst case, to a break in a family. It could cause more emotional harm, more spiritual harm, and even psychological harm to the person involved and to other family members. So let us not allow that either to drive us, and that is why Jesus said, whatever is leading you to sin, cut it off. If fear is what is driving you away, cut it off. How do we cut off our fears? How do we cut off our feeling? The gospel provides us a knife, and the knife is faith. If we have faith in God, then we will be able to cut off our fears, cut off our feelings, and our life will be at peace. Let us pray at this Mass that God will give us the grace not to always allow ourselves to be controlled by fears or by feeling, but to have absolute faith in Him, that no matter the situation, He will get us through. No matter what we are in now, God will not abandon us. He will always come to our help, even when the situation seems beyond any solution. If we have faith in God and trust in His love and mercy, then nothing can ever harm us. May God bless you.